Imagine logging onto a crypto betting platform, right?
Yeah.
And you find this geopolitical market with odds sitting at a really dismal 6%.
Mm-hmm.
And you just casually drop $70,000 on it. I mean, to anyone watching, it looks like you are just throwing money into an incinerator.
Yeah, completely. Like setting it on fire.
Right. But then, a few hours later, a world leader posts an update on social media. Those odds instantly quadruple, and you walk away with over $800,000.
It sounds like a Hollywood script, honestly, like some kind of financial espionage thriller. But that is exactly what we are seeing in the data today, and it points to a much, much deeper crack in the whole system.
Which is exactly why we are here. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We have a massive stack of sources on the table for you today, ranging from intense geopolitical reporting and energy market analysis, all the way to major tech industry shakeups and pharmaceutical mergers.
There is definitely a lot to cover.
Yeah, there is. Our
Yeah.
mission today for you is to uncover how this extreme disruption is forcing a massive restructuring of both our physical world, meaning global energy and trade, and our digital world. So we're looking at AI, tech workforces, and platform accountability.
Right. It's a total overhaul on both fronts.
Okay, let's unpack this because the sheer volume of breaking events right now is just staggering. I mean, we've got an NTSB probe into a fatal Air Canada collision with a fire truck at LaGuardia.
Yeah, pointing to some severe ground system failures there, like the ASDEX system.
Exactly. And then on top of that, you've got Disney abruptly pulling a $1 billion investment from OpenAI over deepfake concerns.
The noise is deafening right now. I mean, it really is. But if we connect this to the bigger picture for the listener, the most critical signals in these sources point to two distinct but colliding shockwaves.
Okay, what are we looking at?
First, you have the geopolitical crisis in the Middle East that is fundamentally choking the physical economy. And second, you have the AI revolution that is just aggressively gutting and rebuilding the digital economy from the ground up.
Let's start with the physical world, because the epicenter of this disruption is completely dominating the headlines right now. It was triggered by Operation Epic Fury,
Right.
which was the joint U.S. Israel strike that resulted in the death of Iran's supreme leader. Now, looking strictly at the factual fallout from these sources, the immediate response from Tehran was to completely restrict access to the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, and, when you look at a map, the Strait of Hormuz seems incredibly insignificant.
It really does. It looks tiny.
It is. It's a waterway just 56 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. But it acts as the primary artery for the entire industrialized world.
Wow.
I mean, under normal conditions, 20 million barrels of oil transit through that tiny choke point every single day.
20 million.
Yeah. That represents 20% of total global consumption, just going through this 56-kilometer gap.
And the data shows that traffic hasn't just slowed down, right? It is practically flatlined. Daily ship traffic plummeted by 90%.
90%. We are looking at a drop from over 130 massive vessels a day down to maybe 6 or 8.
That is wild.
And the market reaction was violent and immediate. Brent crude oil spiked to $126 a barrel almost overnight.
I was reading through the diplomatic reporting in our stack, and the detail that completely caught me off guard is who actually stepped into this chaos.
Right, it's not who you'd expect.
No, it isn't a Western European power or the UN leading the de-escalation on the ground. It's Pakistan.
Yeah, Pakistan's army chief and their foreign minister have taken a highly, highly active role here.
Which makes sense geographically, I guess.
It does. Because of their geographic proximity and these really complex regional ties, they actually managed to secure safe passage for 20 Pakistani-flagged ships to traverse the strait.
Which really highlights the desperation. I mean, 2 ships a day is an absolute trickle, but they are getting through.
They are, and their involvement goes way beyond just securing their own supply lines.
What else are they doing?
Pakistan is currently hand-delivering a 15-point U.S. peace proposal directly to Tehran.
Wow, so they are the middlemen.
Exactly. They have effectively become the designated courier for negotiations in a highly volatile zone.
This entire situation just exposes how incredibly vulnerable other nations are when a single physical choke point shuts down.
Absolutely.
I mean, the sources detail the fallout in India, which relies on the Strait of Hormuz for 90% of its liquefied petroleum gas, or LPG.
90% is a massive dependency.
And it's showing. This crisis has battered the Indian rupee, driving it to a record low of 93.94 against the dollar. Plus, there are 9 million Indian expats working in the Gulf who are suddenly facing severe physical risks.
Right. With the drone strikes hitting infrastructure in places like Kuwait and Saudi Arabia.
Exactly. And hovering over all of this market panic is a strict deadline. Former President Trump has issued an April 6th deadline to Iran to reopen the strait, warning of direct strikes on their power plants if it remains closed.
Yeah, and the resulting pressure on the demand side from all of this is just unprecedented.
Because everyone is panicking.
Right. Governments realize they cannot magically force the strait open, so they are scrambling to artificially suppress global oil demand.
Which brings us to the IEA. Right?
Yes, the International Energy Agency. They just released a 10-point plan to try and survive this shock. And, I mean, it reads like a wartime rationing playbook.
It really does. They're proposing immediate mandates that would directly impact your daily life. They are calling for governments to mandate working from home just to cut the fuel used in daily commutes.
Working from home is an energy policy. It's wild.
Yeah. And they want to reduce highway speed limits globally by 10 kilometers per hour.
And the most revealing part of that IEA plan, at least to me, is their urgent push to shift LPG away from the transport sector entirely.
Wait, shift it where?
They want to reroute whatever gas is left just so citizens in developing nations can keep cooking food in their homes.
Just to keep people cooking.
Yes. That is the level of foundational panic we are seeing. It is so severe that major energy players are completely pivoting their long-term strategies.
Like Total Energies.
Exactly. Total Energies is currently abandoning its massive U.S. offshore wind projects off the coasts of New York and North Carolina.
They're just walking away.
They are willingly taking a $1 billion reimbursement just to pull that capital out of renewables and redirect it back into rapid oil and LNG development.
Okay, let me push back on this a bit, though.
Yeah.
If the Strait of Hormuz is like the aortic valve pumping blood to the global economy and it's suddenly pinched shut, isn't this IEA plan basically just telling the patient to stop moving so they need less oxygen?
That's a great analogy.
I mean, it might keep the patient alive for a few more days, but it doesn't do a single thing to actually remove the blockage.
No, it doesn't. And that is the terrifying reality of physical bottlenecks. You cannot code your way out of a blocked strait. You can only endure it.
Right.
But while governments are panicked and applying these temporary fixes to the physical world, others are looking at this exact same chaos and seeing a highly lucrative opportunity in the digital world.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We have to talk about Polymarket, the prediction betting platform we mentioned earlier.
Let's get into it.
So let's go back to that scenario I mentioned at the top of the show. The data in these sources shows 8 newly created accounts placed $70,000 in bets on a U.S. Iran ceasefire.
Right.
And this happened just before President Trump posted on social media about productive talks.
The timeline is the smoking gun here. When those accounts were minted and the bets were placed, the market odds of a ceasefire happening were sitting at just 6%.
Like we said, basically zero.
Yeah. But after the social media post went live, the odd instantly jumped to 24%. And get this, if a ceasefire is actually confirmed, those 8 accounts will turn that $70,000 buy-in into $820,000.
And from what I understand, they didn't just log in and drop 70 grand in one click, right? That would be too obvious.
Oh, no, not at all. They used a highly sophisticated tactic called wallet splitting.
Can you explain how that works for the listener?
Sure. So you have to remember that on platforms utilizing blockchain, every transaction is public. Everyone can see it.
Right. There's a public ledger.
Exactly. So if a single anonymous wallet suddenly drops $70,000 on a low probability geopolitical event, automated trading bots will instantly flag it.
And then what happens?
The market odds will shift before the bettor can even get their full position in. The price ruins the trade. So to avoid detection, this entity split the money across multiple newly created, unconnected crypto wallets. They essentially masqueraded as a sudden surge of organic retail interest, just a bunch of random people making small bets.
That is incredibly sneaky.
It is. Furthermore, analysts digging into the blockchain ledger found that one of these exact accounts previously won massive payouts on a highly timed bet right before the initial U.S. strikes in late February.
Wow. Okay, so with lawmakers now introducing the Bets Off Act to crack down on these prediction platforms, it brings up a huge debate.
A massive debate.
Are these prediction markets actually crowdsourcing the truth by rewarding highly perceptive analysts who just see the writing on the wall? Or are they just becoming a dark money playground for geopolitical insider trading?
Yeah, this raises an important question about the nature of information parity, because these markets rely on the premise of the wisdom of the crowd.
Right, that a bunch of people guessing usually gets close to the truth.
Exactly. The idea is that collective financial skin in the game produces accurate forecasts.
Yeah.
But when a centralized entity seemingly operates with advanced knowledge of military or diplomatic maneuvers and then uses cryptographic tools to hide their tracks, it completely warps the ecosystem.
It's basically digital arbitrage on real-world warfare,
Exactly what it is.
which actually provides a perfect bridge to the next massive wave of disruption in your sources. Because while our physical supply chains are constrained and being exploited, the digital world is undergoing this brutal restructuring of its own.
Oh, absolutely brutal.
It feels like Silicon Valley is looking at the fragility of the physical world we just talked about and deciding they need to make their own operations entirely immune to human bottlenecks.
The physical world is constrained, yes, but the digital world is currently obsessed with ruthless, almost mechanical efficiency.
Yeah.
We are seeing a fundamental shift in how work is conceptualized and executed, and honestly, nowhere is that more visible right now than at Meta.
Let's look at the meta paradox, because
Yeah.
the numbers here feel totally contradictory to me. On paper, they just delivered a fantastic earnings report.
Really strong numbers.
Yet the sources confirm they are planning a massive 20% workforce layoff. We are talking potentially over 10,000 workers losing their jobs.
It's a huge cut.
But at the exact same time, they're increasing their capital expenditure, their CapEx, on AI to a staggering $115 billion to $135 billion.
Yeah, it looks completely paradoxical from the outside. Why fire your talent while spending hundreds of billions on technology?
Exactly. Why?
Well, it makes perfect sense when you understand the mechanics of what they are actually building. This isn't a traditional cost-cutting panic.
It's not just tightening the belt.
No, in fact, their free cash flow is projected to drop by 75% because of all this AI spending.
Wow.
This is a deliberate labor substitution strategy powered by what they call agentic AI.
Okay, let's pause right there. What makes an AI agentic? How is that different from, the chatbots we've all been using for the last few years?
Good question. So, a standard large language model, like a chatbot, is essentially passive. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer, and it stops.
Right. It waits for my next prompt.
Exactly. An agentic AI is given a goal and the autonomy to execute it. So in a coding environment, you don't just ask it to write a snippet of code, you tell it to build an entire feature.
Well, that.
The AI writes the code, tests it, spots its own errors, debugs the system, and pushes it to deployment, all on its own.
That's wild.
Meta CFO explicitly noted that these agentic AI coding tools have already increased their engineers' output by 30%. And for the elite engineers, the ones they call power users, output is up 80%.
An 80% increase in productivity. That's almost like giving one engineer the output of two.
Exactly.
So wait, if they're cutting 10,000 jobs but overall output is skyrocketing, they aren't completely replacing humans with AI.
No, not entirely.
They're basically turning their remaining core engineers into cyborgs. I mean, they are building AI exoskeletons for a much smaller elite development team.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. I like that, AI exoskeletons. Mark Zuckerberg himself stated that massive, complex team projects that used to require entire departments can now be accomplished by a single, highly talented person using these tools.
So they are completely flattening their organizational structure.
Completely. And to guarantee this transition happens, Meta is tying their top executives' stock option packages directly to aggressive 5-year AI deployment targets.
But are they doing this just for profit margins? Or are they terrified of a new wave of competitors? I mean, if I'm starting a tech company today, I'm not hiring 500 mid-level coders.
Right.
I'm hiring 10 absolute geniuses and giving them the best AI tools on the market.
And that exact fear was explicitly mentioned by Meta's CFO.
Really?
Yes. She pointed out that a company born today would be entirely AI native. They wouldn't have 20 years of legacy organizational bloat or, endless middle management to deal with.
Right, they'd be lean from day one.
Exactly. Meta is preemptively shrinking its workforce to mimic the agility of a brand new startup. But they are powering that startup with a $135 billion AI infrastructure.
But here's the friction in that plan, right?
Okay.
While Meta is desperately trying to armor up for this AI native future, the sins of their move fast and break things past are violently catching up to them in the courtroom.
Yeah, and this is where the fantasy of digital efficiency meets harsh legal reality. We are looking at a landmark historic verdict out of New Mexico.
Right.
A jury just ordered Meta to pay $375 million.
And just to clarify for the listener, this wasn't some quiet settlement where the company admits no wrongdoing and makes it go away. This was a full jury trial.
A grueling 7-week jury trial. And the jury found Meta liable under the state's Unfair Practices Act for deliberately misleading consumers, specifically parents, about the safety of their platforms for children.
The evidence presented was incredibly damning.
It really was.
The sources show the jury saw internal documents proving that Meta executives actively ignored explicit warnings from their own employees.
They knew exactly what was happening.
Right. They knew their algorithms were pushing harmful content, like eating disorders, self-harm, and predatory behavior, directly to minors. But they publicly continued to tell parents the platforms were completely safe.
And because the state pursued this under consumer protection laws, they were able to hit Meta with the maximum statutory penalty.
Which was how much?
$5,000 per individual violation.
Wow.
Which aggregated to that massive $375 million figure. And it is crucial to understand this is not an isolated incident.
No, the legal floodgates are opening.
A separate California jury just found Meta and Google liable for a woman's severe social media addiction.
What's fascinating here is how courts are fundamentally changing their interpretation of platform liability.
That's the real shift. For decades, tech giants used Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act as an impenetrable legal shield.
That's the law that basically says, we're just the town square, we provide the bulletin board, we don't control what people staple to it.
Exactly, the defense they used.
Yeah.
But courts and juries are now dissecting the actual mechanics of these platforms. They're just saying, no, when you actively harvest behavioral data to train algorithms that deliberately push addictive, harmful content just to maximize user engagement, you are no longer a passive town square.
Right.
You are designing a dangerous, active product.
It's the difference between owning the bulletin board and owning a slot machine.
Precisely.
And this backlash is spreading across the whole AI and tech sector. The sources note Baltimore is currently suing Elon Musk's XAI over the Grok model, generating non-consensual deepfakes of local officials.
Right.
And going back to the top of the show, Disney walking completely away from OpenAI over the Sora video generator. The tolerance for tech platforms just washing their hands of the consequences of their algorithms is evaporating rapidly.
It really is. And if we synthesize all of this from the Middle East oil shocks to Silicon Valley's legal battles and workforce purges, you start to see a very clear survival strategy emerging among the smartest players in the market. The companies poised to win the next decade are realizing that pure software and algorithms are increasingly becoming liabilities.
Because they can be copied or sued?
Exactly. They are easily replicated by AI, and they are currently massive targets for litigation. So the real defensible power is shifting back to the physical world.
Yes, the foundational layers, the companies pouring the concrete and printing the silicon for the future.
Let's look at the hardware shift happening with ARM Holdings.
Okay.
Historically, ARM was known for just licensing chip designs. You know, they drew the blueprints and other people built the houses.
Wow, they didn't make the physical product.
Right. But they're completely changing their business model. They are now building their own physical AGI data center CPUs.
AGI meaning artificial general intelligence.
Correct.
Why do they need completely different chips for that?
Well, because traditional chips process data serially, or they handle basic parallel tasks. AGI requires massive, highly interconnected memory bandwidth to handle trillions of parameters simultaneously without bottlenecking.
Oh, I see.
ARM realizes that to achieve this, you can't just mix and match parts anymore. You need integrated proprietary physical systems. They're projecting $15 billion in new chip revenue over the next 5 years.
$15 billion?
Yeah. And get this, their lead customer for this new specialized hardware is none other than Meta.
Oh, wow. So Meta is laying off its human coders to basically buy the physical concrete for their new AI foundation.
Precisely. It all connects. And this race to own physical foundational assets isn't just happening in silicon.
Yeah.
It is happening in biology.
Which brings us to the massive Merck acquisition detailed in your sources.
Yes. Merck just announced a $6.7 billion acquisition of Terns Pharmaceuticals.
That's a huge deal.
It's huge. And they are paying a staggering premium between 31 and 42% over the stock's average price just to acquire a single investigational oral drug called TERN-701.
This is a specialized drug for chronic myeloid leukemia, right? CML.
It is. But the underlying business logic here is, again, defensive infrastructure building. You have to understand a mechanism in the pharmaceutical industry known as the patent cliff.
Okay, what is that?
So Merck's current blockbuster cancer drug, Keytruda, is approaching its patent expiration.
Yeah.
When a patent expires, the formula becomes public domain. Cheap generics flood the market, and the original creator's revenue plummets practically overnight.
They just fall off the cliff.
Exactly. So Merck is deploying billions of dollars right now to acquire physical, life-saving biological assets, hard intellectual property that they can exclusively own and manufacture before that cliff hits.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I mean, well, everyone is distracted by the software updates, the viral deepfakes, and the daily geopolitical posturing.
Yeah.
Should we actually be watching the companies pouring the concrete, printing the silicon, and patenting the biology?
Absolutely. That is where the actual leverage is being built. The software layer is in absolute chaos right now. It's getting sued by state governments. It's laying people off. It's restructuring its entire workforce.
Yeah.
The physical layer, whether that's the oil transit routes in the Middle East, the AGI chip manufacturing, or the pharmaceutical patents, that is where the immovable power lies.
We've covered incredible ground today, from the geopolitical chokehold at the 56-kilometer Strait of Hormuz, causing a global energy panic, forcing the IEA to literally target your daily commute, to anonymous crypto accounts executing suspected insider trading on the outcomes of war. We mapped Meta's paradoxical pivot, purging their human workforce while spending up to $135 billion on agentic AI to fight off lean startups, right as historic legal crackdowns dismantle the old tech shield of Section 230.
It's a lot of change all at once.
It is. And finally, we saw how giants like ARM and Merck are pivoting to exclusively own the hard physical assets of the future.
It really leaves us with a critical paradigm to consider.
What's that?
We've seen today how incredibly fragile our physical world is right now. I mean, one blocked 56-kilometer strait paralyzes the globe, sending ripples all the way into the grocery store and the gas pump.
Right.
Meanwhile, the digital world is becoming ruthlessly, coldly efficient through AI labor substitution. But what happens in a few years when these two worlds fully collide?
Oh, wow.
What happens when those hyper-efficient AI-native systems are given direct control over our incredibly fragile real-world supply chains? Will they solve the physical bottlenecks, or will they just break things faster than we can fix them?
That is the ultimate question. As the systems we rely on every day undergo this violent restructuring, we are going to see exactly who gets left behind and who owns the new foundation. It's a lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, look past the headlines, and as always, stay curious.